Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And is World of Warcraft on its final decline? I have been observing community feedback and content creators covering the entirety of World of Warcraft from Mythic Plus to raiding, and then of course with my speciality being PvP, in order to try and figure out what is exactly going on, what is causing this decline, and what can be done about it to reverse course and get us into a more stable position. Now, the first graph that has stood out to me that I was able to observe from Bellular's video is this red line being Dragonflight Season 3 Mythic Plus runs completed, and this blue line being the War Within Season 1 runs completed. And what's interesting about this is that it runs basically week by week, so we can see exactly what the gap is as far as keys being completed. And we can see that in Dragonflight Season 3, which debatably is, the halfway point of an expansion, it's usually a lower number of participation than the first patch of an expansion, being almost 1 million keys higher in the earliest stage of completion between the two. Now, one of the biggest things I think leading to this is probably delves. Delves were created as a solo player experience for those who are, maybe getting older, don't want to deal with group stress. They want to play an off-meta spec and they can't get invited from LFG. So they'd rather just do their own thing, their own challenge, and progress their character in their own way on their own time. And I do think that delves have likely siphoned quite a lot of players out of Mythic Plus just because the community is aging. We're all getting older. And I think the sentiment that I've seen amongst a lot of players as they're getting older, at least the ones that have their lives together, unlike me, that probably have kids and career and stuff like that, is that they don't really care so much about being ultra competitive. They're just logging in to chill, maybe communicate with a couple of friends and progress their character for a couple of minutes before sometimes they got to get up and go do something. So the population is aging, and if that sentiment is holding true, let me know in the comments down below if that is how you feel. I don't want to make this assumption because for me still, I love playing competitively and pushing to higher ranks, and maybe something will click in my brain in the next couple of years as I'm getting older, and that will suddenly shift. But I would like to know, how true is that sentiment amongst the majority of players? But the main thing is you're getting older, maybe you're not feeling as competitive, and you don't have as much time for group organization. And that is the biggest problem with Mythic Plus. And for me, the solutions that I've seen presented and the solutions that I agreed with was that I think they need a dungeon queue system for Mythic Keystones levels 1 through 5 or something like that. Make them easier as well from difficulties 1 through 5, so that you have a way to get in as a player who's new to Mythic Plus by yourself, basically, with just the queue button. And you're not going to be gate kept depending on how what specialization you're playing, because even as someone who mainly PvPs has been considering trying Mythic Plus, I don't know how I'm supposed to get a group. I could tank, right? I'm coming in with PvP gear versatility. I could become a tank. It just seems like I don't know how I'm supposed to even get into that at this point. I'm so far behind with how many weeks have gone through the season, and I didn't gear up for PvE at the same time. And I don't know where the starting point is to even try and get into that content. And if I feel that way as even just an experienced player, I can only imagine how somebody would feel who just never has played the game before. So it's not very forgiving as time goes on to be able to get into that content. And I think by implementing some type of queuing system, it would at least allow you to get your foot in the door, show what you're capable of, the same way that Solo Shuffle has for PvP in that regard. But I definitely think aging population and delves have likely siphoned a lot of players away from the group competitive format into kind of more of a casual solo player experience. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like the data is being tracked to see, how many delves are being completed. Is that content just now the new hotness, and that's what everybody is doing? But to me, that's the biggest deal. And then the same is probably true for raiding, I would imagine. As you get into higher difficulties that you can't pug, that the participation is likely dropping. So what's the solution to that? The aging population. We're obviously not seeing a huge uptick, I would imagine, in new players or young players. And I think it's because of the barriers to the game. There's so many other games that are free to play. We're seeing now the release of Path of Exile 2, and that is free to play relative to that of Diablo 4. And obviously, I'm sure everybody has their opinions on, subjective gameplay design between the two of them, which is superior to the other. But I think you've got to really put a lot of emphasis on the fact that it's free to play as far as getting way more people in the door and getting them playing it. But unfortunately, I don't know if what would happen to WoW if they ever did that. They've got the image going on of being this prestigious game that you're paying for, and you're getting this high quality price tag for this product, and that kind of image that's going along with it. Also, it's a huge cost to maintain an MMORPG, so it'd be a huge risk to shift away from the current subscription model to a free to play model. But I don't see there being any other solution because they have tried so many different things. The paid promotion to streamers to stream World of Warcraft from other games and other genres, as well as like creator events. They've tried to incorporate Plunderstorm. They've tried other events to try and get new players in, and it just seems like it's not getting them. It's not getting the new players. It's this. The way I like to describe it is it's kind of like a genre of music, right? MMORPGs, they came out early 2000s. Millennials, we loved them. We grew up with them, and we're going to listen to them until we probably go to the grave. But the new kids around the block that are coming up, they're getting in battle royales. They're getting into the new genre, the new hotness, right? And they're not so much getting into MMORPGs. So do you just keep trying to sell to that current audience that's slowly kind of declining away and try and do your best to retain them as much as possible? I think that's what they have been doing. And I mean, I think they have been doing a good job with that, considering, you know, the lifespan of pretty much every other MMORPG right now is it's not great. And it's likely the big contributing factor to why a lot of the biggest MMORPGs are the oldest ones, because we just want the nostalgia. We want to go back into that time frame. So it's a really tough gamble, and it's such a big decision to make that I would think it's unlikely that something like that type of solution would probably ever happen, especially considering the strategy that they've got at the moment with let's release classic WoW, and then that'll retain players for 3 months, and then let's release some retail stuff that'll retain players for 3 months, and then let's go for Plunderstorm or some new type of event type of thing that we're going to do, and that can get players to come back for a couple of months, and the overall numbers are probably looking really good as far as a count. But every single individual game, once they hit that 3-month mark, is going to see a diminishing amount of participation, and it's not going to feel good as somebody who wants to play that version of the game, whether it's classic or retail, right? 3 months from now in classic, it's probably going to feel like the population of the game is going down, and you can't really find people to do stuff with. It's great when it's exciting at the beginning, but how do we make it retain? And maybe you can't, because this is just a pattern that's happening with every game that comes out. Pal World comes out, and it's just blowing everything out of the water, but then suddenly 3 months later, nobody's really caring about it, and then new content comes out, it's going to be great again. 3 months later, nobody's talking about it. It's just the new era, and maybe our brains are being conditioned to it with all of the media, with TikTok and stuff like that, to have shorter attention spans, and nothing can keep us. Like, how often can you sit through like a 20-minute YouTube video versus like a 20-second TikTok video, right? Like, maybe our brains are just being conditioned this way, and it's not that much of a fault to the game design, although I do think like the difficulty of Mythic Plus, the queuing into it, the social aspect of it, these are things that definitely do need to be addressed, but it's also important to take into account the psychological things going on as well. Now, when we look at PvP, I saw this post on Reddit from 3 days ago. On September 15th, it recorded 85,000 solo shuffle rounds being played, 6,000 battleground blitz rounds being played, and by the mid to end of November, the daily averages went down to 25 to 35k rounds of solo shuffle and about 1 to 1.5k blitz played. So we got to break this down into two different ones, because I think there's two main contributing factors that are kind of separate from each other, right? So for blitz, they tried to make the gameplay better by making the system consider, how many of a spec is getting put into a game on each team. So one team doesn't have 3 rogues and the other team has no rogues, and you're in a really tough spot, right? And I think that system makes sense for the highest level of players. When you're playing in the top echelon, you really want a quality match. You don't want to just feel like you lost because the other team got all the Mistweavers and all the rogues and you didn't get any. That feels really bad. But at the lower rating, the casual rating, where the majority of the players are, they don't want to sit in a 40-minute queue. They don't have a 40-minute queue to sit there. The players at the highest level of the ladder, most of them probably can, afford a couple of longer queues to maybe get a better quality match. But again, this is something that maybe needs to be debated, because this was done with the intent of making the experience better. But I think for the majority of players, it actually hasn't. And so much so that it might even just be worth rewinding that change, and just letting one team get a lot of rogues, just so that players can actually get a queue and actually get a game to pop, because I think the queue time is the biggest deal, as well as how many points you get rewarded. When you win a battleground blitz, it feels like you get like 10 points. So you sat in 30-minute queue, you played a 10-minute game, it was 40 minutes of time, and you got 10 rating. Your matchmaking rating is at like 2,800 rating, but you're only at 1,600 current rating. So there's 1,200 rating disparity between where you're currently sitting and where the game is expecting you to be able to play, but you're only getting 10 rating every 40 minutes. That just is mind-blowing to me. I would feel like so demotivated by that. The comparison to that to solo shuffle, where if you're 1,500 current rating with a 2,500 matchmaking rating and you win, you get like 90 points for that. So there's a huge disparity between the systems in each of these, and it's obviously causing a decline. And MMR has been like this main thing that's been a thorn in everybody's side as far as participation, because it's about where you're expecting to be able to play and then where the game is actually putting you, and that not being in alignment alignment, and then you get frustrated and defeated and deflated, and then you just end up quitting. So to me, this is, as far as like trying to maintain retention throughout that long span period of time, we need a completely revamped rating system. It needs to be completely revamped if we want to look to try and maintain players past the 1 month, 2 month mark, and hold them for as long as possible into a season. And then, therefore, as a result of that, if we can actually retain more people, the queues will likely be better as well, which means that it's not like this death spiral, right? It's like, oh, MMR, I don't feel I can get to my rating right now, so I'm going to stop playing. And then when people stop playing, the queues get longer, and then people can't be like, I don't got time to sit in this long of a queue, so I'm going to have to stop now as well, and it's just gone. This is why it's so important. This is so important. And why it's really disheartening to me is because I actually think the game is really fun right now. I actually have a blast with the gameplay, whether it's the Battleground Blitz matches I'm doing, the solo shuffles, the world PvP. I even love dueling right now. I really think the game is very fun. I think PvP at the moment is very fun. We just had an amazing tournament that we came off the back of with AWC. So it's like, it's really just sad for me because I want to see the game do the best that it can possibly do. I want everybody to be happy. And I'm sitting here like, these changes they've made to the game, I'm having a really good time with the game. I think it's like one of the best states that it's been in, and I think it's going to continue to get better with the changes that we're seeing being made. But then it's like the game is the best. I'm having the most fun with it ever, but the participation is going down to the lowest that it's ever been. So it's like these things just don't make sense to me. How is this possible? How can I be having so much fun in the game, but the participation is going down so much? So it must not have anything to do, or have very little to do with the gameplay, or maybe I'm just subjectively biased towards the current gameplay, which is entirely possible. But I think it's more attributed to matchmaking and the rating system and your level of progression. That has to be looked at. It has to be looked at if we want to maintain health long-term over multiple seasons. It's absolutely worth the investment to be able to retain players, because this is not sustainable with this current round. Because I do anticipate that these numbers will likely go up towards when we know the end of the season is actually coming. And I think we've got confirmed dates on 11.0.7. It's like December 18th or something like that. That's not the end of the season, but that's like the last mini patch of the major patch before the end of the season. And I do imagine these numbers will uptick towards that period. This is likely like we start hard, we kind of go down, and we hit a low point, and then they come back up. That's the pattern that every PvP season I've ever seen. So this is unfortunately just like, with the current rating structure that it is, this is the low point that it's going to be at. And it's unfortunate that the game is actually the most fun. So like, if you're playing the game just for fun, I think it's definitely still going to be worth your time. But if you're aiming for like certain levels of rewards, then it's understandable that some players would feel like it's more incentivized to wait until a later time. So these types of social issues, these types of queue times, these are like the main issues, I think. Again, an aging population, and I think the fact that it's not free to play is making it hard to be competitive for younger players who have options with newer genres that they're excited about, that are free to play, that they don't need to debate with their parents to say like, hey, can I get $15 to play this game? Is likely leading to this kind of just like spike graph gameplay that's going through, as well as the psychology thing going on with our attention spans and the sort. But those are the problems that I see at the moment, and that I've been able to observe from the community, some solutions presented to them. Let me know what you think. What's your biggest problem with the game right now? Or what are you really liking about the game? How about that? Because we never, like, it's at its low point. This is what it is almost every time during a patch cycle like this, but I'm having a lot of fun. And I'm streaming every day. That's linked in the description down below. And I'm doing challenges on every spec, and I'm having a good time. So like, it's a good time. We just need to figure out how we can get people into this. I guess another subject would actually be healers in solo shuffle. We need a tie-breaking rule to be able to let healers gain rating. Because when you join a solo shuffle as a healer, it's a good chance one DPS is going 6-0 or 0-6. And when that happens, you just tie. And most often when you tie, you might even lose MMR. So we need a tiebreaker system for healers in solo shuffle. And the tiebreaker should be if a DPS goes 0-6, whichever healer kept that DPS alive longer duration of time, they get something for that. You kept the player who went 0-6 and lost every game alive longer. You did a better job than the other healer. You get something out of keeping them alive longer. And the benefit of that is that the DPS player who was kept alive longer gets more time to learn how to play the game. So you get rating and incentivization to try your best with the player who you kind of know is going to lose. Whereas right now you kind of just give up. It's like, this guy's going to lose. I'm not, what's the point? I'm not even going to bother. I've seen that a lot. I don't personally do it, but I've seen that a lot. And that doesn't help the player who's, having a bad lobby and losing learn anything. And you don't get anything to try anyways. So incentivizing the healers to try harder to keep the DPS player alive as long as possible as a tiebreaker, I think would make playing a healer feel a lot better. You'd feel like you have I got some control on the outcome of this game when it ends because I was able to heal it longer, and then that breaks the tie, and then I get some rating out of it, and then likely it's going to equalize more with the rate that DPS gain rating, because right now DPS just gain rating easier, and path of least resistance for humans, they're probably going to edge more towards DPS because it's just easier to get rating on average. You're probably 200 to 300 rating higher. If you're an 1800 healer, you'd probably be 2100 if you were a DPS. It's just that much of an impact. So tiebreakers for healers absolutely needs to happen. Those are my observations. But like I said, I think for PvP at least, we'll see an uptick again, and I'm interested to record these stats, and maybe we'll come back with another video in the future to see if that's the case. But like in the last 3 weeks of the season, in 2 to 3 weeks, I think these numbers will uptick again. But something needs to be done about the queuing system for this, because the queue time on Blitz absolutely just destroyed the bracket. But other than that, thank you guys very much for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed the discussion, and I will see you in the next one.